Alright guys, so in the last video we went ahead and started our reducer. We moved the search users function to an action within the GitHub state. So right now the users aren't actually showing because the users are now coming from, they're coming from the GitHub API, but they're going into our GitHub state provider here, as you can see. But they're not listed here because this component isn't actually reaching into our GitHub state. It's still looking for a prop that's being passed in. So I'll show you that. If we go to app.js and we go down to where the users component is, which is right here, it's looking for a prop of users, and that's not what we want. In fact, we want to get rid of both of these, users and loading, because now these are part of the app level state, part of context. So we can just reach into the context and grab that stuff rather than having to pass it in. So now let's go to users.js, and what we want to do here is again bring in our GitHub context. So this is going to be GitHub context, and then we need to initialize it. So we're going to go right here and say const GitHub context equals use context, which we have to bring in, keep forgetting, and we want to use the GitHub context that we brought in. Okay, and you want to bring this in with an uppercase G and then initialize it with a lowercase g. So we have to bring in the use context hook if we're going to use it. All right, and now we should have access to GitHub context dot anything, dot any of this stuff here that's in the value. Users, loading, search users function, all this stuff is now available to us. Okay, so again, just to reiterate, whenever you want to use this in any component, any of that state or any of those actions, you simply bring in the context, initialize it, and you can call it on this object here. Now we want to deal with loading and users, which is part of the GitHub context. Now I could go down here and I could say GitHub context.users, and I could go here and say GitHub context.loading, but let's just destructure it so we don't have to change anything below. We'll just bring out loading and users from GitHub context. Now it should be coming from the main, what's this? Identifier loading has already been declared. Okay, so the reason we're getting this is because I'm pulling it from the context, but I have it up here as props. Remember, these are no longer props. We're no longer passing those in, so we don't even need that. So we'll save that. Good. Don't worry about these warnings. It's just saying we haven't used these yet. So let's go back, and now this should actually show the users from the app level state, from right here. Okay. So right now it's empty, but let's go ahead and fire this off. And there we go. So now it's coming from our app level state. It's coming from here and no longer coming from app.js. So I can actually, well, no, I was going to say I could get rid of this users, but I think we need it for something else that's currently being used down here. Yeah, show clear, stuff like that. All this stuff is going to go. You're going to see how cleaner this file gets. So now let's move. Let's see. Trying to think of. Let's do clear user, right? So instead of passing it in as a prop, which we have here, and we're not going to need show clear either. We're going to leave the set alert for now because we're going to actually create a different context for alert. We'll do that after. But let's get rid of both of these, not pass these in, clear user and that show, what was it, show clear. And let's take clear users from here, get rid of it, and we can save that for now. And then let's go into our GitHub state, and where we have clear users, we'll go ahead and paste that in. Now we want to do something a little different here. Excuse me. With all our actions, we want to dispatch to our reducer, right? So we have a type called clear users. So I just want to dispatch that. So I don't even need these curly braces or any of this. I can just simply say dispatch and dispatch an object with the type of clear users. Okay, and then we'll go to our reducer, our GitHub reducer, and let's create a case for that. We'll do that right here. So we'll say case clear users. We want to return down whatever the current state is, and then users is going to be set to an empty array. We're going to clear the users, and then just set loading to false. Okay, so it's going to just clear the users from the app level state. Oops, we don't need that. So let's save. Now, in order to call clear users, we have to go into the component we're using it in, which is search.js. It was being passed in as a prop, but we got rid of that. We also got rid of the show clear. So all we need right now is set alert. We're going to handle that later. Now, we already have the GitHub context in here, right? So we don't need to bring that in. Let's go down to where we actually call the clear users, which is here. Now, we no longer have show clear. All we need to make sure of is that the users have something in them. The users array has is greater than 0. So let's say GitHub context, and we have access to the users. And we're going to say if the length is greater than 0, then we want to show the clear button. Now, on click, we just simply want to call GitHub context dot clear users. All right, so we'll save that, and now the clear should work, and it should clear the app level state users. So I'll hit clear. Okay, so that's not working. Let's see what's going on here. The prop cleared users is marked as required. So I still have prop types clear users and show clear. We don't need those anymore. I don't know if that was the only problem, but let's see. Loading is marked. Let's just users is marked as required in users, but it's undefined. So we still have prop types in users as well that we don't need. We actually don't need this at all because it's not coming from props anymore. It's coming from context. Okay, we can get rid of this too. Okay, so those are gone. And I think I know why this isn't working, this clear, because in our GitHub state, we didn't add it to our value, so it's not available. Anything we want to be available needs to be added to this value. All right, let's try it again. Hopefully it works this time. Clear, and there we go. Okay, so it's clearing it from app level state rather than just the app.js component where we had everything before. So now I don't think we're using the app.js component level state users at all. Yeah, we're not passing it into our single user component. Yeah, we're not passing it anywhere, so we can go ahead and get rid of this. Okay, and ultimately we're going to get rid of all these. So the next thing I want to work on is the get user, which is to get the single user for the user component. So I'm going to completely move this. So save that. We'll go into our GitHub state. So this is get user. Let's put that right here. And a couple things that we're going to change here. Set loading doesn't need a value because this just calls, basically just dispatches to the reducer set loading, which sets the loading value to true. Okay, then we're going to make our request, and then we want to dispatch. Okay, all these actions are going to end with a dispatch to the reducer with a type. So this type is going to be get user. And the payload, the data we want to send, is going to be res.data, which is the single user that comes from this endpoint. So let's save that, and let's go to our reducer. And we already brought in get user, so let's put that right here. We'll say case get user, and we want to return our current state. We'll spread that across, and then user is going to be the action.payload that comes from the GitHub API, and we just want to set loading to false. Okay, so it says get user is not defined. That's because inside app.js we got rid of our get user here, but we're still passing it in right here. All right, so we're going to get rid of that. And then let's also get rid of the user state, because we're going to get that from context as well. So we can get rid of that. As far as the repos, we'll leave that for now until we get to it. Let's get rid of loading though. I'm sorry, let's keep loading because, no, we can get rid of loading. And then up here we can get rid of the state user and loading. We haven't moved the repo stuff yet, so we're going to keep that. All right, now we want to go to our single user component, which is user.js, because right now set loading is not defined. Let's see. You know what? Let's put loading back, because we're going to get that error. All right, but let's go back. Let's go into user.js, and just like we did with the other components that are using anything from the context, whether it's an action or a part of the state, we need to bring in the context. So let's import. And we want what is it? GitHub context. Okay, we also need to bring in use context up here. Okay, and then let's see. User, loading, and get user for now. These aren't going to be coming from props anymore. They're going to be coming from the context. So let's pull those out. So we'll say const get user, loading, and user is now going to come from GitHub context. Okay, now we shouldn't have to change anything down here, because this avatar URL, all this stuff we set to equal to pull out of user, which user is now coming from the GitHub context. All right, loading we also pulled from the GitHub context. Get user we're calling right here. So you know what? Let's move this above the use effect, so that because we pulled out get user from the context and we're using it in here. So we're just going to put that at the top. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? I did this wrong. We need to set GitHub context equal to use context. I don't know why I keep putting uppercase O. It's just, I don't know, the way I hit the keyboard or something. And then we're going to pass in the GitHub context. All right. So let's see if this works. Let's search for a user. Our app level state gets filled up. Let's click on this. So get user is not a function in use effect. And let's see, we're calling it here. Get user is not a function. We're pulling it out, and that's because I once again forgot inside GitHub state we need to add it here into the value. When I created this application, I kept doing that as well. All right, there we go. So now it works. So now it's pulling this user from the app level state. If we look at React and we look at our GitHub state provider inside user, we have all this data. Okay, so it's no longer being passed in as a prop like it was before. So let's handle some of these prop type errors or warnings. The prop user is marked, get user. So basically in our user.js, in our component, we just want to get rid of some of these prop types here. Loading is not a prop anymore. User is not a prop. Get user is not. That should clear that up. Good. So, yeah, I think the last thing we need to do as far as our GitHub state is the repos, or are the repos, because right now the repos are still, we still have this in our app.js, and we want to get rid of this and put this into our state action. Okay, so we'll do that in the next one.